Hello, I'm Adrian, and today we're taking a look at Optimus Prime's fighting style throughout the live-action Transformers films. In previous episodes, I've analyzed and broken down several superheroes, ranging from the legendary Batman to the patriotic Captain America to everyone's favorite wall crawler, Spider-Man. But today I'm going to be breaking down the fighting style of one of the most famous giant robots, Optimus Prime. And yes, it goes without saying that Optimus probably didn't take any specialized classes in the various disciplines I will be mentioning, but his Cybertronian training undoubtedly covered a very wide array of fighting styles, which explains why he is such a well-versed and skilled combatant. Also, there are various degrees of knowing a fighting style, and although one may know elements of something, this doesn't mean I'm saying the fighter I'm talking about is a master in every single style I mention, as this has been brought up in the comment section before. Believe me, I don't think Green Arrow is a master in capoeira because he threw a martelo de negativa, but he most definitely knows elements of that martial art, as if he didn't, he wouldn't be able to throw it in the first place. Returning to Optimus, he's going to be, without a doubt, the most brutal fighter we will ever take a look at on Fight Scene Breakdown. And what I mean by this, I mean that he takes standard moves to the most extreme version possible. He doesn't just simply uppercut someone, he uppercuts him and crushes their heart in his bare hands. He doesn't just slash at someone's face, he literally rips the face right out of them. He doesn't just parry a punch, he goes right on ahead and rips the arm out of the socket and uses it as his own twisted melee weapon. And the best part is, due to the fact that this is all with robots, no matter how insanely brutal it gets, it's still A-okay for the kids. So with that in mind, let's take a look at just how many fighting styles Optimus Prime knows in the Transformers saga. Before we even get to his hand-to-hand skills, we need to cover just how great of a shooter he is. Whether it's long-range or short-range gun battles, this Autobot leader is packing serious firepower and knows how to use it effectively. As a matter of fact, his excellent shooting skills remain even when he's in the air, as he proved during this epic fight where he effortlessly weaved in and out of danger while firing away. There are plenty of schools dedicated to teaching their personnel on how to fire in a combat situation, and I know I've mentioned action shooting with Spider-Man before, but since he's using actual firearms as opposed to web shooters, I'm going to attribute this to his skill in combat shooting. Combat shooting is very similar to action shooting in that competitors go from target to target trying to be as accurate as possible, but the difference is that in combat shooting, there's a very big emphasis in refining one's technique for situations that would arise in, you guessed it, combat. The United States Marine Corps actually uses their stages as ways to train for things including long-range accuracy, movement, and transition between guns. They use it to pinpoint deficiencies in their training. As to why I'm including his weapons training as a fighting style, it's because he easily weaves it into his overall performance on the battlefield, typically switching between hand-to-hand tactics and firing his weapon. But Optimus doesn't always get to go in guns a-blazing, and that's when he must rely on his surprisingly exceptional hand-to-hand skills. Sure, he was somewhat of a pushover during his initial tussle with Megatron, but from Transformers 2 onwards, Optimus turned into an unstoppable juggernaut, taking on increasingly lethal foes. An interesting martial art Optimus shows skill in is the ancient martial art known as Gasca. Gasca is a traditional South Asian form of combat training developed by Sikhs, and in modern usage it refers to the northwestern Indian martial arts. It's a martial arts style focused primarily on weapons, including several kinds of swords along with a vast array of other weapons. Optimus regularly handles a huge variety of weapons including several swords. One of them seen here resembles the exact same curved designs used in Gasca. But besides the variety, I primarily attribute his weapons fighting style to this martial art due to how gracefully he moves in combat. Gasca is a very theatrical style, much like Wushu. It also incorporates a small shield, and Optimus does indeed use a shield, but for that we need to turn to the next fighting style on the list. One of the biggest style changes from Transformers 3 to 4 was how they redesigned everyone to have a more medieval warrior kind of look, but the biggest style change was that he had his very own sword and shield, the quintessential medieval combat tools. Historical European martial arts, or HEMA for short, is an umbrella term that refers to martial arts of European origins, or in other words, those that were formerly practiced but did die out or evolve into very different forms. You may also hear the term Western martial arts to describe the very same thing. There are plenty of modern reconstruction efforts underway to truly nail how these warriors fought, but several concepts can be learned from historical documents that have been left behind. But you may be asking yourself, exactly how does Optimus exhibit his skill in medieval combat, besides the obvious fact that he looks the part with his brand new form and sword and shield? And for that we turn to one of the most important and most often overlooked elements of a knight, the shield. Traditionally, we have all been taught that the shield is primarily a defensive tool, used only to block incoming attacks or set up attacks with a sword. But in reality, the shield is a weapon in its own right. They aren't used to catch blows passively, but they are moved to parry and deflect. It's much better to push a blow aside than to catch it full force. A shield used by a medieval warrior will be one used with purpose. He will hold it forward and he will move with it in a fluid motion. Taking that into consideration, during the final confrontation with Lockdown, notice how Optimus readily uses his shield in combat. He first blocks an overhead strike, then smacks him right across the face with it, anticipates a follow-up attack by actively hitting him with the shield again in order to follow up with a sword strike. He actually loses his sword, and his shield thus turns into his only offensive weapon until the very end of the fight. But Optimus isn't always lucky enough to have a massive sword and shield with him, so let's take a closer look at his hand-to-hand skills. Just like the other fighters in this series, Optimus is very familiar with the good old punch. A punch can be delivered in a myriad of ways, and depending on how it is delivered, it usually corresponds to a particular style. As it has been elaborated on before, boxing is without a doubt the best fighting style suited to punches. The way in which you are taught to punch places great emphasis in torquing your body and twisting your wrist to be able to achieve a maximum amount of power. In Optimus's case, as I elaborated on before, he adds a bit of brutality to it. Not content with throwing a measly old uppercut, his uppercut perforates his opponent's mechanical rib cage to literally hold his spark or heart and crush it with his bare hands. He also throws devastating right hooks, powerful left hooks, and is no stranger to bobbing and weaving. But sometimes Optimus's killer uppercuts, in the most literal sense possible, aren't enough to get the job done, and this is where he displays a little of his expertise in various grabbing and throwing techniques. Perhaps his favorite technique hails from Hapkido. Hapkido is a very eclectic Korean martial art that shares many similarities to Taekwondo, but has techniques from other martial arts including joint locks and throws to make it a more well-rounded fighting style. It's particularly useful in countering kicks as it builds off a martial art that is mostly based on kicking, Taekwondo. In the original Hapkido counter, you grab the person's incoming punch or kick and then strike the extended limb. You can see him perform a very straightforward version of this in the Force battle as he grabs Megatron's hook kick and then bashes his elbow in on the joint. But this being Optimus Prime, he sometimes gets creative with the concept of wrapping and countering. During this fight, he does indeed wrap around the arm, but chooses to slice the arm off with his sword. He once again lops another arm off with Starscream and uses it as a melee weapon. And in perhaps his most brutal reversal, he breaks Megatron's arm and forces him to fire on his own face, causing him irreparable damage. Expanding on his grappling abilities, Optimus is also well versed in the techniques of professional wrestling and judo. On the wrestling side, notice how he uses the ever popular headlock where you circle an opponent's head with the arm. And this being Optimus McViolent, he follows up by jamming his sword through the Decepticon's jaw and up his skull, killing him instantaneously. Optimus also executes a move known as a spear in pro wrestling, where you dive at your opponent, hitting them with your arm and shoulder and then slam them onto the ground. Now look at Optimus. He charges at Megatron, hits him with his arm and shoulder, and then takes him to the ground. On the judo side, he's got several judo throws in his repertoire, and perhaps most notably even does an excellent armbar with Galvatron. I know I've attributed this move to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu before with Captain America, but considering that Optimus has not yet fought on the ground extensively, I'll group this with his wrestling and judo expertise. One martial art I was a little surprised to see considering we're dealing with giant robots is Taekwondo. Taekwondo specializes in kicks, and Optimus actually demonstrates two of its most popular techniques. The first is the very popular kick used by heroes far and wide including Captain America, Green Arrow, Spider-Man, Batman, and Daredevil, the push kick. It's accomplished by lifting the knee and effectively pushing forward by extending your leg. It can be done with a pushing motion or with more of a blunt snapping motion, but the travel arc remains the same. Besides using the ever popular push kick, he also uses the side kick. The side kick is an extraordinarily powerful kick where you pull in your leg and extend with as much force as possible, striking with the heel of your foot. Optimus also employs concepts of other martial arts, including Muay Thai. Muay Thai is a martial art which favors brutal close quarters techniques. Elbows and knees are absolutely critical to Muay Thai, and they are part of what is known as the art of 8 limbs, since you also use them in your fighting arsenal besides your traditional punches and kicks. Elbows and knees are best suited for close quarters attacks as you don't need to extend your whole arm or leg. In Optimus's case, he uses a devastating upward elbow strike, and of course, the ever useful knee strike. It also appears that Optimus is familiar with elements of salat. Salat was developed with the philosophy in mind of you killing the enemy before they kill you. Obviously that means that a grand majority of their techniques are very quick and very violent. Believe it or not, there are also over 100 variations of it, but each one emphasizes pinpoint strikes and vicious takedowns. And one of its most popular concepts in that pinpoint accuracy is the end target of their spinning hook kick. Instead of aiming at the body or head, it goes right to the area behind the knee, effectively causing the opponent to buckle down, which is exactly what Optimus does to Megatron during his final battle with him in Transformers Dark of the Moon. Furthermore, he frequently strikes the knees during his Forest battle, displaying Salat's concept of going after weak points that aren't targeted in other martial arts. Optimus also employs concepts from Wing Chun Kung Fu, where there's an emphasis on several weapons including the bow staff, which he easily uses when he disarms the fallen. Axes are also extremely common in Chinese martial arts, whether they be wielded as single or double axes, and even as a throwing axe. And relating back to his skill in salat, they too also typically wield axes. Make sure to subscribe and click on the description below to see the playlist featuring all the previous episodes in the series. So in conclusion, how many fighting styles does Optimus Prime know? They are combat shooting, Gasca, historical European martial arts, boxing, Hapkido, professional wrestling, Judo, Taekwondo, Muay Thai, Salat, and Wing Chun Kung Fu, which brings us to the grand total of 11 fighting styles. What other character would you like to see me break down in terms of his fighting style? Let me know in the comments below and be sure to subscribe, and you can follow me on my Twitter, Instagram, and brand new Facebook fan page, Godzilla Rex, to be notified when another new episode premieres. It would also be great if you could join my Patreon to get access to cool behind the scenes stuff and a bunch of other rewards. See you next time.